and kind of interview. This is somebody who really, for me, embodies the changing your game kind of approach, really. When I met Caroline Marsh back in, I think it was 2006, she was considering getting involved in property investing. And she came down to Bournemouth, where I live, with her husband, Mike, who's an accountant, and they had an underperforming property portfolio. And we were sitting across the table. Mike was doing most of the speaking. I was kind of answering the questions and things like that. And I think in a 2-hour meeting, Caroline probably said about 1 or 2 sentences. When she was speaking, she was kind of visibly shaking. Maybe, you know, my impact, I don't know, maybe I have that effect on people. I made them scared. I don't know what it might have been. But I also remember a little while afterwards when they joined the business, we went to Swindon and we went out to actually buy some houses. And the way we actually do mentoring with people is we go out in the field, we show them what to do in a live environment, to actually go out and buy houses. So we went to this estate agents in Swindon, and I kind of showed Caroline how to do it a few times, what to say, what not to say, how to kind of come across with confidence and you know, and experience in what you're talking about. And then it was time for Caroline to have her turn and talk about mess it up. I mean, you know, just tongue-tied and all that sort of stuff. And I just thought, really, how is this person actually going to become successful in property? So I'm not going to say any more than that. That's the kind of backdrop to the interview, really. But somebody I've got a huge amount of respect, admiration, considered to be a genuine friend and business partner within PPP. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from Caroline herself. Warm welcome for Caroline Marsh. Okay, so Caroline, take us right back to the beginning in terms of your early childhood. How did it all start?
Oh gosh, okay, talk about changing your game. I was born and brought up in Zambia in Central Africa, and both my parents had really good jobs, so we had a better lifestyle. Unfortunately for me, my father was my greatest inspiration, and at the age of 10 or 13, he actually died, and that was quite a hard moment for me. But then my dream was to become an air stewardess. I just thought when I grow up, I want to travel the world, and I loved all the glamour. And so a local airline was recruiting, and I thought, I'm going to give it all that I know to do, I'll get that job. And thankfully for me, for 5,000 applicants and 10 positions, I was one of the 10.
Okay, so let's just hold it there. So, I mean, that must have been so traumatic. And I think from, you know, when you've told me before, you were in a situation you were actually quite wealthy. And then when your father passed away, you know, things changed in a financial perspective, didn't it?
Absolutely.
What was it that gave you the inspiration when, you know, in those dark times to say, I can be an air hostess? Because I'm sure that must have been a dream, but quite an unrealistic dream in some ways, because I think there were such a small number of places for the number of applicants.
I mean, I think what happened before my father's death, my father was my greatest inspiration, and he believed in me, and, you know, I'm the only girl, and with three brothers, and so that really stayed at the back of my mind, and he always said to me, Caroline, you can do it. Whatever you put your mind to it, you will do it, and you will make it. And I hang on to that, just thinking, you know, I'm going to do what I have to do, but I will make it and I'll get there.
Okay, so you took the strength from your father.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
He was probably your first mentor in many ways.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, fine. So then, what gave you the why an air hostess? Why not a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer?
Well, strangely, I was watching television and I saw an advert for British Airways. And I saw these ladies wheeling their bags and they had their hats on, and I thought, wow, I like that. I want to be just like them when I grow up. Okay. And that became my dream. I suppose for young children, you hear them say, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a policeman, and you think, you know, why? But actually, that's the same thing that happened for me. I thought, I want to be that. I just loved, they looked glamorous, and they were traveling around the world, and seeing them smiling all the time, and I thought, I want to do that.
Okay, great. So you went for the interview. How many people went for the interview?
5,000.
5,000.
For 10 positions.
Okay.
And you've got to remember, obviously, to be an air stewardess, for going for the interview, you had to dress up quite nicely, and I didn't have the best clothes. So I turned up just as I was, and thankfully, I didn't actually know there was 5,000 applicants until after the interview.
Right.
So I walked in there thinking, well, I was just one of the, the few people that were out there. And then the lady said to me, actually, there's 5,000 people.
Okay. Fantastic. So you were one of the 10?
I was one of the
Chosen.
10, and I began to live my dream, traveling up and down the country.
For British Airways?
No, well, it was for Zambian Express.
Okay.
And then Zambian Express, in fact, went into liquidation 3.5 years later. So I was
Wasn't
going
your
back.
fault, was it?
It wasn't. No. I was going back to square one. But then something happened. When that airline was going to liquidation, I was going to the liquidator's office to get my paycheck, because that was my last option. I thought, if I can take my money, remember, you know, coming from Africa, we don't have benefits. And so it's thinking, what is my next hope? What am I going to do with my life? And so I thought, if I can get my money and turn that money into some sort of enterprise, that would become something I can help my brothers and my family with. My brothers were, you know, wanting to go to university, and so my brother, when I got the job for the airline, with the airlines, my brother, I began to sponsor him to go to university.
Wow.
And so when I lost the job, well, when the airline went bust, I still had that responsibility.
Okay.
And
so it wasn't just about you doing the job of your dream, it was actually supporting your family.
It was supporting my family, and that was the thing that actually really stood out the most. In as much as I was getting all the money and traveling around the world, it was really having to make a difference to my family. That was the thing that gave me, I think, the fulfillment. I just felt that I was doing what I was called to do at that time. Okay. And so I went to the liquidator's office, and I got in there, and I met this guy. No, actually, I walked in, and his PA said to me, well, you can't see him, he's far too busy. And I thought, look, you've never met an African woman. This is all I have, okay? This is my last hope, and I'm not going anywhere until I get to see him. So long story short, I walked out of that office with two most important things in my life. Mm-hmm. I got my paycheck that I went there for.
Very good.
And the second thing, believe it or not, I got a date with the liquidator. He fancied me, and I thought, I'm not coming out until you give me my money. But long story, I went out a few times with him, and I fancied him. I got married to him.
So the accountant I told you about earlier is actually was the liquidator.
Absolutely.
For Zambian Airways.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And so, of course, my husband and I then relocated to the UK for better opportunities. And when we got here, it was quite difficult. Being an African woman, you know, understanding how the culture was, how the system worked.
When was this?
In 2002.
Okay.
Yeah, so
10 years ago.
10 years ago, yeah.
So 10 years ago, new to the country. Had you ever been to UK? Really
I'd been
spent
to
any
the
time?
UK on holiday,
Okay.
but not to live here.
Right.
And so it was the weather, it was the people, and all the things that I had to embrace. But I did it. I came here and I worked for Nationwide. I just didn't. It wasn't just for me. And then I worked. In fact, then I began to work for Nationwide for Infinite Field Marketing, doing promotional work.
Okay.
So I traveled up and down the country, promoting cereal bars, cars, everything and anything within reason, until we had a new addition. So I had Ashley, and so I thought, well, I'd stay at home and look after the children.
Okay, so you stay-at-home mum?
So stay-at-home mum, and that was, I loved being a mum and a housewife, but I think there was more to my life than just that, so, because I couldn't now afford to also help my family back at home, because all the income was just for Michael, really. And so that then I began to think, well, there's got to be more that I can do. What is it that I'm to be doing as opposed to just staying at home? And so I remember Michael going on a business conference in Alicante. And I thought, look, I'll come along with you because I really need to hear, really, God, what is the purpose for my life? And at that conference, on the second day, I thought, I'll come along with you and I'll just sit in and just hear, what they have to say. And I heard you speak. And you were talking about property investments and how you can maximize on rental income. Now, I've never been to university or college, and so it was thinking, oh my gosh, I really want to do that. That's the guy that I came to hear. And suddenly I just thought, I'm going to have lunch with him. In fact, I ran up to the table and I sat there and I said, I'm not sure you remember it, but I said, Steve, let me take you out to lunch. Let me just take you out to lunch. And we sat having lunch. It was great, but I didn't understand a lot of the things. All I was thinking was, just show me how to make the money and I'll do what I got to do. But then when I left, the one thing happened. When you talked about how much you charged per hour, I was having my lunch. I had to stop eating. I thought, pardon? How much per day? But then I thought to myself, well, how much do I really want it? How much do I want to make a difference in my life and my family? What is really at stake? And I think you had 3 levels of mentoring. Now, my husband's an accountant, and he said to me, Caroline, he said they have gold, silver, and platinum. how about the silver? I said, no. The man said platinum, and he does platinum. I want to learn from him. But long story short, I think it was the best thing that happened to me, because then sitting under your mentoring program just helped me understand the business and understanding exactly what was more, my life is more than just even getting into property investments. Sure. So it's about helping other people right now, of which I then had an opportunity, of course, to feature on primetime television, Channel 4, Secret Millionaire, and that really...
Sure. Hold on 1 second. So this is not a pitch for the mentoring program, by the way.
No,
so
it's not. But I never get to say...
Move on from that. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, you had a structure, you had a framework. We started the mentoring in Swindon. You started to, buy houses. And I think Caroline just threw herself. The one thing I'm inspired by you is that you just throw yourself at something. You kind of say, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to give it a go. You learn from your mistakes and you carry on. So you quickly built a portfolio in Swindon. And then basically what happened is, some of you have seen the Secret Millionaire TV show. Well, they contacted me in my office and they said, we'd like you to screen test for the Secret Millionaire, which I did, and I failed miserably. So at the end of that, they said, thanks for doing it, but you're kind of not right. Do you know any sort of inspirational women? Because the average millionaire or multi-millionaire in the UK is a white male aged between 30 and 50. So we've got them, there's lots of those types of people. So I said, well, I know Caroline, she's just, she's built a £1.5 million portfolio. I said, it's not equity, it's a £1.5 million portfolio. She used to be a model, she's got a young son, and, really, really inspirational woman. So they were like, oh, we want to see her. So they fast-tracked Caroline, did the screen test, and literally...
And I passed straight away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They just said to me, we're on. I thought, no, hang on a minute, I have got children, I have got a business, I have got this, and no, we've got to come and do it now. Yeah. And it moved really, really fast.
Absolutely. So she was whisked off. I remember her phoning me up and I said, Caroline, where are they going to film it? And she said, have you ever heard of a place called Toxteth?
Because I didn't know. I mean, I've lived in Africa all my life. And then they said to me, we're taking you to Toxteth in Liverpool. And they didn't tell me until we were at the train station. And I took my son with me, actually. He was about a year and 2 years. And so they called Michael to tell him where they were taking me. And so as soon as they said Toxteth in Liverpool, he just got so scared, thinking, oh my gosh, where have they taken her? Because he understood the history of Toxteth, and I had no clue. Yeah. So I said to Steve, I'm going to Toxteth in Liverpool. And it was as if you live in two different worlds. I just couldn't believe it was here in England, because being in Africa, all we get to hear of England is a land of opportunity, things are happening, of which, great things do happen. But they never actually tell you of the levels of deprivation, of poverty, illiteracy, and I saw that with my own eyes, and it just really changed my perception of the UK. Sure. But I think the greatest thing was being able to make a difference in somebody else's life. That just really moved me and humbled me. That it wasn't so much giving the person the money, but it was actually being able to recognize some of the great people in our communities that are doing, so much, the unsung heroes, doing so much work to really try and better their own communities, and seeing her life changing and saying, somebody has recognized this great work. Wow. And the next thing she began to do was do even much, much bigger events. So
this is one of the people that you met out and about in Toxteth, and you, what were the sort of donation, what causes did you end up giving money to?
Okay, so I ended up having to support two charities. One was a young lady called Duan, and Duan worked with predominantly black kids in her community by providing after-school care, summer holiday activities for them, because what happens is in these places, if the children haven't got anything to focus their minds on, then they begin to get into mischief, and then we begin to see the ripple effects of disfranchised children, and the effects, it just becomes really, really bad. And then the other people was Dingle Community Centre. They also provide similar sort of support, except it's almost to predominantly white children. So in this day and age, there still is some sort of racial discrimination, because there was the whites and there was the black. side of things, but they were both great, amazing projects that I embraced, and I've carried on to work alongside and support them. So it's given them money, but also given them, with Duan, we began to work on helping her in terms of how does she actually come out of the system of being not just on benefits, but actually, how everything else works, in setting up something of her own that she can run with and be an inspiration to other younger people.
And I think it's fair to say after you were on that show, it sort of catapulted you into the limelight, didn't it? In a whole kind of different world. I remember Caroline phoning me up and saying, well, you tell the guys the story about the phone call where they wanted you to do the keynote speech.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, following on to all of that, in the eyes of the word you say, you become very famous and you're on television and you're speaking at various events. And I look at myself as to, my gosh, what a change in my lifestyle. From stay-at-home mum to suddenly speaking with these great, amazing business people. The latest one that really threw me was I got a call to go and speak at an event up north. And it was with a guy, well, first of all, they say to me, we'll actually come and pick you up in a helicopter. And I thought, pardon? Helicopter rides, but then it's, stages where Bill Clinton was sharing. He was a speaker, and then they wanted Caroline Marsh to go and speak. And so it was being on that stage, helicopter rides, getting paid £8,000 for 40 minutes talk. It's just like, wow, I like that. I want to do more of that. If I can go from stay-at-home mom and just share my story. I said, Steve, I think I've gone past the property stuff, I think I'm doing some, I'll just share my story and I get paid all that money. But yeah, I think it's really, it's taken me to another level of thinking. But not only just that, but in fact, I began to think, well, there must be so many other people out there that would go through my steps. And then a girlfriend of mine, she came to me and said, Caroline, you've gone from a stay-at-home mum, and I've seen you from nothing really to you're a millionaire now. Can you teach me? And so, of course, I said, Steve, yeah, I'll teach you, same things that I've done, because I think all business fundamentals are the same. I'll just show you the same key steps. And working with this Brazilian girl who spoke very little English, today she now has a cleaning company and employs 11 members of staff. So I thought, exactly. So when it really means you can change your game, you really can. I've done it, and somebody else has done it, and so many people are doing it as well.
So it's gone full circle. You've kind of gone
absolutely.
Through. And I think a number of some of your guys are
some
here
of my
today.
people are here, yeah. So I actually,
I've
got some of my people that I work with as well and help other entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs.
Brilliant. Okay. Caroline, I'm afraid we've kind of come to the end of it, but you are an inspiration, somebody who's really changed their own game, and I hope you've inspired some people here today. So a big round of applause for Caroline.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. It was quite a hard moment for me. But then my dream was to become an air stewardess. I just thought when I grow up, I want to travel the world, and I loved all the glamour. And so a local airline was recruiting, and I thought, I'm going to give it all that I know to do, I'll get that job. And thankfully for me, for 5,000 applicants and 10 positions, I was one of the 10.
Okay, so let's just hold it there. So, I mean, that must have been so traumatic. And I think from, when you've told me before, you were in a situation where you were actually quite wealthy. And then when your father passed away, things changed in a financial perspective. And kind of interview. This is somebody who really, for me, embodies the changing your game kind of approach, really. When I met Caroline Marsh back in, I think it was 2006, she was considering getting involved in property investing. And she came down to Bournemouth, where I live, with her husband Mike, who was an accountant, and they had an underperforming property portfolio. And we were sitting across the table. Mike was doing most of the speaking. I was kind of answering the questions and things like that. And I think in a 2-hour meeting, Caroline probably said about 1 or 2 sentences. When she was speaking, she was kind of visibly shaking. Maybe, my impact, I don't know, maybe I have that effect on people. I made them scared. I don't know what it might have been. But I also remember a little while afterwards when they joined the business, we went to Swindon and we went out to actually buy some houses. And the way we actually do mentoring with people is we go out in the field, we show them what to do in a live environment, so actually go out and buy houses. So we went to this estate agents in Swindon, and I kind of showed Caroline how to do it a few times, what to say, what not to say, how to kind of come across with confidence and experience. Caroline Marsh. Okay, so Caroline, take us right back to the beginning in terms of your early childhood. How did it all start?
Oh gosh, okay, talk about changing your game. I was born and brought up in Zambia, in Central Africa, and both my parents had really good jobs, so we had a better lifestyle. Unfortunately for me, my father was my greatest inspiration, and at the age of 10 or 13, he actually died, and that was
Experience in what you're talking about. And then it was time for Caroline to have her turn and talk about mess it up. I mean, you know, just tongue-tied and all that sort of stuff. And I just thought, really, how is this person actually going to become successful in property? So I'm not going to say any more than that. That's the kind of backdrop to the interview, really. But somebody I've got a huge amount of respect, admiration, considered to be a genuine friend and business partner within PPP. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from Caroline herself. Warm welcome for